time, Ireland, people would have been happy maybe to go through the courts and wait for payment. I think what perhaps we're seeing now is more and more people who may need cash flow in particular, instead of just waiting for what can be a relatively lengthy process at times, solicitors' letters, the like, they're now going directly to these debt collection agencies. Yeah. The worrying thing, of course, in all this is that it's completely unregulated. So
and I'll be talking to James about that in a moment. But the reason people are sometimes assigning the debt to a third party, and that might only be 30 cents in the euro that they'd get for it, is that they need the money now, and they're looking at almost like the sands of time running out. They're looking at the monies that other people may have running out, and they fear by the time the court gives them a judgment that there'll be no money left to get. So therefore they're trying to get it early.
In that situation, you cut your losses and just say, look, you look after this debt. I'll take whatever it is you're offering in the euro and see what you can get it. Yeah. The question then is how do the debt collectors in question go about getting that money? Now, obviously, it's worth pointing out as well that there are plenty of reputable debt collection agencies, but the lack of regulation is clearly an issue.
All right. Okay, John, thank you very much for joining us. John Downs, investigations correspondent with the Sunday Tribune. Now, James Treacy, you publish StubbsGazette, so probably that's the most famous thing that you would be known for. Talk to me about the changing landscape of debt collection.
Well, we took over StubbsGazette from Dun & Bradstreet a couple of years ago. And since then, over the last 24 months, it's obviously getting bigger and bigger by the week. I mean, for example, 2 years ago, a judgment for over 100,000 would be headline news. Last week, for example, we had 2 judgments over 50 million, which didn't get mentioned in the paper. That's
how things have changed.
Things have just got out of control. Now we hear quite a lot from some of our clients. I heard a story there last week from a client of ours down in the west of Ireland. A friend of his, he was a builder and obviously did quite well during the Celtic Tiger and invested some of his money in hotels, restaurants. Now, obviously, he was affected like a lot of builders in the last couple of years, and his building company collapsed. And apparently, he owed 40 grand to a local builder's merchant. He wasn't engaging with the creditor, and the creditor lost patience and engaged the services of, let's say, a notorious Dublin personality. A couple of weeks later, 3 white vans arrive up into the high street. 6 burly guys get out, start knocking around into the local shops, found out what restaurants he owned, found out what hotels he owned. They arrived into his restaurant, sat down, ordered a slap-up meal, and when the bill was presented, they said that the owner would look after it. They proceeded up to his hotel, did the exact same thing, booked into an executive suite, and when they were presented with the bill, said that the owner would look after it.
Take it off his account.
Exactly. So eventually they found out where he lived, so the 3 vans pulled up to the driveway. The local Gardaí were called. The local Gardaí in that situation, the only thing they could do was to get the vans to move out of his house and park at the side of the road. So eventually he got the message, and he couldn't afford to pay the 40 grand. He paid him, the creditor, 20 grand up front and entered into a repayment over 6 months.
Yeah.
But just to reinforce the point, apparently there were 2 live rats released into his letterbox a couple of days later.
Just to make the point. Well, we can't put 2 and 2 together and necessarily get 4, but it does seem likely that people who were owed money by this man were responsible for that kind of thing. The normal situation, explain to us when Stubbs becomes involved, when publication in Stubbs is inevitable.
Well, I suppose we would break down the industry, like on the debt recovery industry, can be broadly broken into 2 separate categories. You have the amicable stage and the non-amicable stage. So the amicable stage is where a creditor has outstanding debts. They obviously want to get paid, but they still want to maintain a relationship with their debtor. So, for example, they might want to renew their business in 12 months' time. And if they go through the court process, which we would consider the non-amicable stage, they probably will burn their bridges, and there's not a chance of them doing business with that company in future. So in those cases, a lot of companies will engage the services of a third-party agency, whether it's a debt recovery agency or a solicitor. And it's what we call the third-party effect. So you can still maintain the relationship with your client, but you're saying to them, listen, this is serious now.
Yeah, I'm looking for the money. Now, come on.
Exactly. And in most cases, the creditor realizes, okay, the game is up, he's not messing anymore, and they will engage with him. Okay, they may not be able to afford the full bill at the moment, but they will start engaging and probably enter into some kind of payment plan.
All right, so if it becomes other than that, though, if it's not amicable anymore.
Exactly. If relationships break down altogether, you have a choice then of going to the court. And at a very basic level, you can go for, depending on the level of the debt. If the debt is under £4,000, I think it goes to the local district court. If it's below 38 grand, it goes to the circuit court. Anything over that goes to the high court. So in most cases, the creditor will bring it to the local court.
Yeah. Now, suppose he gets a judgment in whichever court it is, and the person doesn't have the money to pay it. What happens then?
Well, in most cases, about 85% of cases, the judgments are undefended. So the debtor realises he doesn't have a case to answer, so won't turn up on court on the day. So the judgment grants the judgment by default. Now, if the creditor wants to actually have that registered, he has to go to the High Court and have it registered in the Registrar's office in the High Court. And they're the ones that are published in StubbsGazette.
All right, they're the ones that are published. Is it still a terrible thing to happen to you to be in Stubbs?
I know when I was a kid, when I was 4 or 5, if I was acting the maggot, my parents would threaten me with publication in Stubbs. I hadn't got a clue what they were talking about, but I knew it was somewhere I didn't want to be. So it's 200 years old, the publication. So it's most people, from consumers to companies, they know StubbsGazette. They're not quite sure what it is.
So it is where people, if they are looking for the great and the good to find out if they're financially embarrassed, they check Stubbs.
Yeah, well, I
mean, if you're Joe Blogs, it doesn't actually matter to you, except in your locality where you're trading. But other than that, they tend to look for the high profiles in Stubbs.
Well, one thing I would say, like Stubbs, the purpose isn't really to name and shame, although it is used for that purpose. Yeah. The purpose is to protect the creditor. So it will have a hugely detrimental impact on your credit rating if you appear in Stubbs. So, for example, if you're looking for a credit union loan or a bank loan,
you're not going to get it.
No.
Now, talk to me about the lack of regulation, because I have a copy of the regulations in Britain, and they're quite comprehensive. The kind of things you can and cannot do. Like, you can't come at 6 in the morning and knock on someone's door saying, give me the money.
Exactly. Well, we have the Consumer Credit Act, which spells out how you can engage with debtors. So, for example, you're not supposed to ring them before 9 in the morning and after 9 in the evening. You can't contact them at their place of employment unless you have their specific... unless they tell you you give your permission to ring them. But unfortunately, in the UK, for example, we publish Stubbs in the UK, and we know from operating there that it's highly regulated. The Office of Fair Trading, or government body, they regulate it, and it's also self-regulated through the...
So if someone just wants to set up as a debt collection agency, they cannot...
There's nothing stopping them.
No, but they can't do that over there without being vetted.
Oh, absolutely not. Like, one of the things the first thing they would look for at a very basic level is see that the agent doesn't have any criminal convictions. The second thing they would look for is that they don't have any outstanding judgments, either personally or as a company. And thirdly, they would expect them to abide by the Consumer Credit Act.
Yeah. The people who were involved in here, we know about the frequently named Dublin criminal who's involved in debt collection. You were saying to me during the commercial break that there's some Eastern European gangs coming over to get involved in our debt collection. Yeah,
we heard this. In addition to publishing StubbsGazette, we also operate the Irish Fraud Bureau. And we did a presentation to the Joint Committee on Finance and the Public Service a couple of months back with the Criminal Assets Bureau. And as one of the members of the Dáil Committee, they had come across a case of an Eastern European gang. They were acting on behalf of a building subcontractor who was doing work for one of our developers, who I won't name. Apparently the developer owed him $6 million. He didn't pay, so the subcontractor engaged the services of an Eastern European debt collection
enforcers.
Exactly. And I think he paid up within 2 months.
All right. So you're calling for regulation. You want regulation of
absolutely. Charlie Flanagan, the spokesperson on Justice, and Fine Gael introduced the Private Members Bill in May, and he's calling for regulation through the central bank and through the Financial Services Authority, and we would fully endorse that. But before that even gets to that stage, there should be self-regulation, either through the Irish Institute of Credit Management. I mean, we only got involved in the debt recovery.
But self-regulation, I mean, if people can go into it, if I can set up a debt collection agency tomorrow morning, I mean, and I'm a criminal, I'm not going to bother self-regulating, am I?
No. But the reality is then you probably won't get business from some of the big Irish companies, the telephone companies, the banks.
All right. Peter in Athy says it costs so much and it's so hard to pursue debts legally that using a strong-arm collector makes sense. A lot of people might think that way.
The problem is if you engage the services of a strong-arm collector, if the strong-arm collector goes along and batters the creditor, for example...
You are an accessory.
Exactly.
All right.